Hello everybody, I'm just doing some updates on some projects that I have going on, and one of those projects was the late 40s, early 50s football of my father's, and if you recall, that football was really filthy. It was a dark brown. It had torn, broken laces on it, and it was deflated. It didn't hold air. So what I did was I cleaned up that football. I was able to bring back some of the original color to it. In cleaning up that football, I did discover that at some point in time, this was probably laying on the garage floor like many kids' footballs do. You just take them and toss them on the garage when you're done with them. It looks like it was probably laying in some oil. That oil did eat away the leather. It did damage the leather permanently. It saturated the leather, and that oil can't be cleaned off the ball, so it's left some permanent scarring there. And that does appear all over the ball in many places, on pretty much all the panels. I have conditioned this leather, and I've repeatedly conditioned this leather for several days now, but the leather is still significantly damaged, and that you can condition this leather all you want, but you're just not going to bring that back. And it's all over the ball. It's on every panel. So it's just consistent with the age, you know, and a ball being kept, you know, in the conditions where it was probably kept. I know this particular ball was kept in the basement for a long time, and that's, you know, dry damp conditions on and off. So that's where we're at with that. So like I said, on this particular ball, it had a bad bladder. We pulled out the bladder and replaced it. And of course, I actually tore this bladder taking it out. The bladder was glued inside, and as I began to pull it out, it actually ripped. But and pulling out this bladder, we did discover, or I did discover, that the bladder was made by the Seamless Rubber Company, which was located in New Haven, Connecticut. I tracked down the patent number on this and found out that this particular valve design right here had a patent on it in the late 1934, probably 1936. So that kind of helps us track down the age of the ball. Although these rubber valves really weren't put in the balls until the 1940s. So we're still thinking, or at least I'm still thinking, this ball is somewhere around the 1940s, 1950s. Also, that the Seamless Rubber Company did make products for Wilson Sporting Goods, but that still doesn't mean that this is a Wilson football. So I'm still not sure who the manufacturer of this football is. So I do know, though, that the bladder that was manufactured for it was made in Connecticut by the Seamless Rubber Company. So with that said, I went ahead and replaced the bladder in this football. So it's got a new bladder inside there. I pumped it up. 13 pounds is the official amount of air that you put in an NFL football. I could not put 13 pounds of air in this. I was concerned that in its state, it might burst at the seams. Even though conditioning this football, originally this football was rock hard, and in conditioning this football, I have managed to bring back pliability to it. I don't know if you can tell, but you can squeeze this leather now. You can squeeze that leather. It's much more pliable now. It's got some moisture back into it. Even the seams are more moist, but you can squeeze it. There you go. That's a better view. But it's still in a very weakened state, and I just didn't trust that if I put 13 pounds of pressure in it, this ball wasn't going to burst at the seams. You know, even in a better indicator, that is, I laced this football up, and I used the standard NFL lacing. And if you take a look at the lacing, the profile of it, you'll notice that it's wavy. It's got a waviness to it. Typically, when you lace a football, the lacing follows the landscape of the ball, the curvature of the ball. It sits nicely on the ball. This particular case here, you'll notice that it's uneven. And that's caused by the laces not being pulled tight. And there's a reason laces weren't pulled tight. And once again, it has to do with the condition of the leather. And the leather was in such a state that as I began to pull it tight, and if you look right here, these were the first two holes I started lacing. If you look right here, you can see where the leather started to tear. So, as a result of that, I had to lace it rather loosely. And even though the ball is laced loosely, it's still laced tight enough so the bladder won't come popping out. It is laced to a point where both halves are meeting each other. It's just not pulled tight to a point where when I blew up the ball, it would actually hold the two halves completely together. So it is kind of bursting at the seams, you might say, but it's not bursting out of the seam. So this ball probably only has about 9 pounds of pressure, where it should probably have 13 pounds of pressure in it. So I also left I gave it new lacings. I don't know if you recall also when I originally showed you this ball, it had a lacing pattern on it similar to like a baseball, this crosshatch on it. And originally I thought, well, maybe that might be unique to this football. It might even give me a way to identify it. It was so unique to a football, as I hadn't seen it before, on a football. After doing some research, it appears that at some point in time, the standard lacing had probably broke. Somebody took a shoestring. That was the only way they could figure out how to lace the football. They laced it up. The shoestring probably, or the lacing probably wasn't broke. The shoestring was just probably too short to lace the football up all the way. So that's just how they ended it. And so that's how they relaced the ball. So it's now properly laced the NFL way. I'll go ahead and I'll leave this lacing on there since there's no original lacing for this to replace it with. So in that case, that's the best we can do for them. So I'm going to call this project done. I'm going to send this ball back to my dad. He can set it up on the shelf and he can admire it if he likes. And until our next project, I'll talk to you later.